Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the One Fear Per Year podcast, where we talk about walking through fear and truly living our best, most adventurous, most authentic, beautiful lives. So, thank you for joining me today. And y'all are in, I don't even know where y'all came from, but y'all are in for a treat today. Holly James, thank you for joining me on this episode.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I am so excited because I saw you perform and it was a storytelling event, and I'm just in awe. Like, seriously, I'm sitting there just like, this woman is so brilliant, so funny, such a good storyteller. And so just thank you for saying yes to this interview and talking about life and fear and living our best lives. So I want to start with this, you doing storytelling and mainly stand-up comedy. How, first of all, how did that begin in your life? I'm so curious as to how people become like stand-up comics.
Yeah, that was something I always wondered about for a long time too. I started stand up. I've only been doing it for 2 years. I started it actually is funny because it's kind of related to fear where I realized this is something I'd always wanted to do, is something that I always wondered if I could do. And it was like when I would watch stand up, I almost didn't like watching it because it would like irritate my spirit kind of like, "Oh, I think I could do that. I wanna do that." Um, but I didn't even know how one does that. I was kinda like, "I guess I'll just go about my life, and one day someone's gonna offer me a Netflix special probably." It's like,
I'm
but
so
someone will
damn cute.
yeah, someone will just recognize I'm pretty funny and tell me to do it. I don't know what I was waiting for. I was waiting for some kind of outside source to say, "You should do this, and here's how," kind of. Um, but I don't even know exactly why at the time that it happened, but I was like, "If I don't try this, this is gonna be the thing on my deathbed that I go, I wish I had done that. I wish I had tried that." Like, I have awesome kids. I've done a lot of the things I wanna do, um, personally, but that was the thing that I was like, I feel like I'm gonna be unsatisfied with my life if I don't even see if I could be good at this. So, I started with a class. There's a few classes in Sacramento, but I started with a stand-up class. Um, and then I just kept going to open mics, talk to other people who are in the scene about how they did it. Basically, you just go to open mics until people around you notice you're showing up a lot and you're funny, and then they'll start booking you on shows, and that's kind of how you start stand up, and then hopefully it builds from there. Right now I'm mostly at the local level. I've gotten to do a few cool things, but mainly local shows. Um, but yeah, that was the thing, was like I want to see if I could do this. I know I'm funny. I had theater experience, so I kind of understood how to hold space on stage. Um, and I think it came pretty naturally to me. To
Yeah, I
stand up.
kind of a natural talent too.
Yeah.
What so talking about the fear of doing that, what was the main fear for you in starting to do stand-up comedy?
Um, my main fear it's kind of funny because I feel like what you would expect is, like, stage fright or, like, rejection, and I didn't really have that because I just don't get a lot of stage fright unless the stakes are really high. Um, but my main fear was I was gonna get too obsessed with it and it was gonna, like, ruin my family. Um,
Really?
yeah, which, I mean, ironically, I did get divorced, like, not too long after I started. But I don't think it was, directly because of stand-up, it was, other things, but, I have had to find a lot of balance with it and with being a mom, and, I have to say no to a lot of stand-up things that I would love to say yes to because, these are my nights with my kids. I have 50% custody, so when I have them, I'm not gonna get a babysitter, I'm gonna be home with them. So I think that's been a fear of mine is, like, I wanna feel like I went after this with everything I had, but I also never wanna feel like I pursued this pipe dream at the expense of my kids, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, oh, that 1,000,000% makes sense, 1,000,000%. I love, though, how you said when you first knew that you this was something you were going to regret, because I think that's such an important point is, like, living our lives so that we don't have that thing at
Mhm.
the end that we're going, "Man, if I just would've XYZ."
Yeah.
And the fact that you started with classes, I think is huge because we can learn first, we can do research, we can feel, like, more solidified in that way, which I think is just amazing. Is there ever a fear of saying something, of expressing something that you think people won't like or, maybe won't laugh at, won't relate to? Is there that kind of fear?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit, especially as I'm, like, now kind of venturing into storytelling a little bit, and that feels way scarier to me than stand-up, because it's so much more personal, and my stand-up is very personally based, but there's still, this wall of humor that kind of and a lot of the jokes I wrote, over a year ago, so they don't feel I have jokes about my divorce, like, I feel fairly disconnected from them, I can say them as if they're present tense, but it's a joke, um, but, like, storytelling, like, diving deep into something that happened, I feel a lot of fear around that, 1, because of the vulnerability, and 2, um because I feel like it's not entertaining enough, like, I feel like nobody wants to just hear me talk, and I think part of being a funny person is I think a lot of people become funny, because they realize that's a good way to hold somebody's attention, like, I'm the 3rd of 4 girls, I realized really quickly, like, no one was gonna listen to me unless I was being real quick and real sharp, and if you do that and you get people's attention, but if you just try to tell this long story and you don't have little punch ups to keep people engaged, you lose them, and I think, um, more than people rejecting my story is people being, like, bored of me or, like, "Why is she even telling us this?" I think that's kind of where my big fear in storytelling comes is just being like, "Does this matter? Like, does what I have to say matter to people?" Um,
Mm, that
yeah,
is totally, and I can relate to that too. I think that balance, though, that you're talking about of almost the roller coaster where there's the tension and then the release that you give people in storytelling, I almost feel like those 2, the humor and the vulnerability, the heart side, the depths of your soul exposure kind of thing could be a great complement to
totally.
each other.
Yeah, totally, I think the best storytellers do that, it's just it's a hard skill to learn, in, like, long form storytelling. I'm actually doing on Thursday, I'm doing, that same show again, and I'm telling, like, a more vulnerable story, and I have fewer ideas for how to punch it up. And so I'm like, "How is this gonna go?" 'Cause there's so much of me that's like, that, like, stand-up in me that's like, if you're not getting a laugh every, you know, several seconds, then you're bombing, and telling a story is obviously a different mode like, defining success in telling a story is a lot different than in stand-up, but, I mean, I definitely think humor is like I said, the best storytellers do really balance that, like, bringing it down and, like, building tension and then releasing it with a joke, and, it's like a lot of work to craft something like that in a long in a long form, um, and I tend to it's easier for me to write kind of out loud with people rather than sitting and writing it out, I don't know, maybe just some attention deficit, the jokes come to me easier when I'm actually talking, so I'm a little bit like, "Well, we'll see what comes out." Like, hopefully I say something funny in the middle of it, or it might just feel kinda heavy.
Well, and let me just encourage you to lean into that. and play with it like you're going to. I know, and it is scary to do something kind of different or feel like something's not landing or there's that empty space. But uh, because I know what you're talking about, but when I watch people, I don't have to laugh every so often. Like there is enough to hold people's attention even when they're not laughing and it seems heavy and weighted and it hits those deeper places inside of human beings. I just think that's kind of good and important, and when I hear stories, I am engaged, even if there's not a laugh or a whatever to validate,
Totally.
just just seeing you that one time, just a little encouragement, like lean into that and allow that to kind of breathe and be. And I think you might be pleasantly surprised at the impact that you can have even without that. Because that's a good point. It's almost this external validation with the laughs.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which I could totally appreciate and see, and also just kind of surrendering that and knowing, having this faith and trust that it's landing on some level,
right, yeah.
whether
Yeah,
or not you see
it
it.
it's a different it's a different art form, storytelling, than stand-up. People go to stand-up to laugh, and if you're like, "Well, let me share some of my trauma," and it could be funny, but probably not. They're gonna be like, "This is not why we bought tickets on a Friday night," you know? But the
Totally.
storytelling audiences are so, like, they're there for the human experience, and they're very, engaged and, wanting to hear what you have to say. So it's just a different art form, and um, I think as stand-ups, we train our ear for the laugh, and so we have to kinda learn how to move away from needing that validation.
Totally. Have you seen that Nanette? I think it's called
Eh
Nanette.
Yeah, uh-huh, Hannah Gadsby.
Yes.
Mhm,
I remember that gave me kind of that feeling of storytelling that was vulnerable and deep, that had a message, and also I was laughing throughout, so I was like, "Oh,
oh,
that's
yeah,
pretty."
she's brilliant storyteller, and she does that thing that I was talking about where you, like, build tension, and then you release it, and then,
Yes.
you know, one thing that, um I've learned about storytelling, like, I've learned from teachers about storytelling, is, like, the more tension you build, like, the bigger the laugh kinda needs to be to kind of diffuse it if you're gonna keep doing it, 'cause, eventually it can you know, especially if you're sharing something painful or, hard for the audience to kinda digest, you do need to allow some breathing room in between.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, switching gears a tiny bit. So when we were at the storytelling event, you were talking about your past with, a certain religious organization.
Mhm,
And, I was a missionary kid, so I grew up in this very kind of religious environment as well. I know we talked a little bit about it,
mhm.
but let's talk a little bit about the fear when it comes to that. Like you're in this religious organization, a certain group, there's a certain way of thinking and being, and how did fear play a role in exiting that, or how did just fear play a role in general in that part of your life?
Yeah, I mean, hugely. I was in that mission organization. I left, rather abruptly due to a whole lot of things. Come on Thursday if you wanna find out why. Um, and then I was, heavily involved in church after that. My ex-husband was a pastor, I was also a licensed pastor with the Foursquare denomination for a little while. Um, so we were really involved. I was all in on, that was the entirety of my community was church. Like, I knew hardly anyone outside of church. And so when in 2021 is when, doubts and questions started coming in for me, and I couldn't shut them off. and I wanted to. Like, there's kind of this misconception that people that, like, deconstruct from their faith just, like, wanna go sin or wanna go, be rebellious or whatever. I'm like, "No, I was like, this was my whole life." Like, I kinda lost everything about my identity and my, relationships by changing how I thought about things. So it was very scary, the fear of being rejected by, um, like, my whole community, um, and I think more than that, more than the fear of rejection, because people weren't necessarily mean when I talked to them about it was more of a fear of being misunderstood, because when you're trying to explain why you're struggling with certain aspects of faith to somebody who holds real tightly to those, I think it really, it challenges. They can't really jump in there with you without, some really heavy consequences for themselves. So it's hard for anybody to validate what you're going through or even say like, "Hey, I don't get it, but what you're doing is important and you need to like find the answers that you're looking for." It's just they just can't. Just the nature of needing to be right about your faith just doesn't allow you to go there with somebody. And so, yeah, it was a really scary time, to sort through what I believed and thankfully there's a lot of resources out there, a lot of online communities of people who are going through very similar things. So I did find camaraderie in that, but, um, it's scary to change your entire life, basically, just around what you believe about something. Um, and then, like, even talking about it, like, is such a huge part of my life, like, having left the faith and, for very thoughtful reasons, I feel, um, I wanna share the journey of my life and even, like, in storytelling and stuff like that, there is such a fear of, like, how is this gonna be perceived by people in the crowd who maybe still hold to these things, and I wanna be really respectful and never, like, act like I think I have the answers or I think people who still believe this are stupid or anything like that, because that's not at all how I feel, but I also want to find space to share why I think what I think and why I landed where I landed without, kind of the assumptions that get made by others. So, I don't know, did I answer your question? I think I talked a
Yes.
lot.
No, this I mean, I really could talk to you for hours about this just because I know we've had some similar experiences with that.
Mhm,
And, there's a lot of fear too for me in expressing, I think, uh, kind of how I believe because it was so pushed on, or, there's this evangelizing, proselytizing concept. And so now I want to be very careful with, I don't want to ever push my beliefs per se onto other people.
right.
But knowing, I mean, I feel like I'm a very deeply spiritual person. And so knowing how to properly express and relay uh, certain truths now that I hold or see. And there's a lot that I just go, I don't know. I
Mhm.
just don't know.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, for me at least, I just think love is the answer. And whether that love is, it's almost like this, the undercurrent. And then there's all these religions maybe and different beliefs and thoughts on top of that, but
Mhm.
there's this beautiful undercurrent of unconditional love that I feel in my life all the time. And so the expression of that for me gets a little tricky. So how do you, when you talk about it, your current beliefs,
Mhm.
how do you feel about that? Is it still, I'm working through this, I'm still figuring it out, or how do you show up in that way?
Yeah, I think I mean, I agree with everything you said about love and how, like, I think every religion is trying to point to that in their own ways. Um, my main thought now is, like, I don't know what ultimate reality is. I don't know exactly what happens when we die. I don't know, why we're here, how we got here necessarily, but I my main belief right now is that I don't think that whatever I believe is going to have an eternal consequence for my soul. So, I think that's kind of my starting point of, like, yeah, I mean, some days I'm like, "I think, maybe this," and other days I think kinda differently, but I just don't think that we, like, believe our way into, um this dichotomy of heaven and hell, and so I think that it creates kind of this weird power imbalance when you're talking to somebody who maybe does believe that, because there's so much fear and anxiety if you do believe that. If you believe that somebody's maybe gonna, like, spend their eternity, in a really bad place, like, that's so scary, and I feel for my parents who think that about me, like, that's so scary, and it creates this, like, weird dynamic because they, like, really need me to believe what they believe, and I don't need for them to believe what I believe. Like, I don't really believe anything very specifically, so that would be hard anyway. Um, I just kinda need for them to believe that I'm okay, and that is tricky.
Eh
It's like we're not talking about the same thing, you know?
yeah. And at the end of the day, letting each person kinda have their own experience and accepting of that. And holy moly, we have totally run out of time, but I have one last question that I ask everybody, and that is no right or wrong answer, but for you, if there was an opposite word of fear, like just one word that was the exact opposite for you, what would that word be?
Mm. Um, the word that, like, popped into my head was tenacity, and I don't know that that would be my answer tomorrow, but for right now, I'm gonna go with tenacity. Um, it's it's moving through whatever you're faced with, whether you're scared or not. It's, taking life by the horns and not waiting for things to happen to you and not letting the fear dictate your life.
What a beautiful way to end this episode with tenacity, with going for the thing, with not laying on our deathbeds going, man, I wish I would have done X, Y, or Z. Let's go out there and truly live our best lives and have a good laugh or two while we're at it. Thank you so much, Holly, for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yay!